Okay, we're up to Sif Base in this Maamar, page Samach Ches in your copies. The Maamar is on this week's Parsha, V'haya Ekev Tishmun. And literally, and it will be after you listen to the mitzvahs of Hashem and keep them, then Hashem will keep the promise He made to you. So the Maamar is discussing the word Ekev, V'haya Ekev Tishmun, that it seems to be a statement of fact. And it will be, after you do the mitzvahs, you'll get rewarded, as if it couldn't be any other way. We have free choice, we might not keep the mitzvahs. Who says we're going to do it? So the Rebbe explained that what it means, Ekev means at the end of time. Ikza Moshiach. In the Ekev, the footsteps of Moshiach. At the end of the time, you're definitely going to keep mitzvahs, because in the end, we are going to do tshuva. And then, Hashem will reveal all the promises to us. And so the Maamar started by explaining that it's dafka through the Yerida, through the descent down into this world, into the physical body, and into Golus, that we bring about the Ekev, the end of time, and the rewards that come with it. It's going to go further into it in base. So let's have a look. In a Pirush Anal, the Abnur Tzemach Tzedek, the V'haya Ekev Tishmun, She'ekev ul Meloshin Soif V'koy al Achaz Yomim. The explanation that we quoted from the Tzemach Tzedek, which was that Ekev, V'haya Ekev Tishmun, and it will be after you listen, that the word Ekev really refers to the end, meaning the end of time, the last days before the coming of Moshiach. That interpretation, Yesh L'Kasher Im HaMaamar HaMedrash Al HaPasuk, can be connected with what the Medrash says on the Pasuk. Amalem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Medrash says, Hashem says to the Jewish people, Schar mitzvahs be'ekev ani noisen lachem. The reward for mitzvahs I will give you in the end. Shenemar v'haya ekev tishmun. As it says, and it will be in the end, v'haya ekev. In the end you will listen. So the Medrash says that what does ekev mean? Ekev means at the end of time I'll give you the reward for mitzvahs. It doesn't come now, the reward for mitzvahs. You do a mitzvah now, you don't necessarily see the impact that it has. You don't see the reward immediately, but in the end of time you'll get the reward. That's what the Medrash says. So hang on a minute. The Tzemach Tzedek says, what does the word Ekev mean? Iksar Mashiach. That at the end of time, before Mashiach comes, you're going to do mitzvahs. That's what Tzemach Tzedek says. The Medrash says, what does Ekev mean? At the end of time, the rewards will come. Implying after Mashiach comes. Ekev means, V'haya Ekev, at the end of time, when Mashiach comes, you'll get the reward. So, how do we reconcile these two explanations? The fourth line, according to the Medrash, that it's discussing the reward for mitzvahs. When it says Ekev, the end, it means after Mashiach comes. But according to the simple reading of the pasuk, it's talking about doing mitzvahs, not the reward of mitzvahs. That you should listen, God, and do the mitzvahs. So when will we do the mitzvahs properly? At the end of Golus, when we'll finally listen to Hashem, and the reward will be Mashiach. So the way to the connection between these two interpretations is the reward of mitzvahs that will be at the end of time when Mashiach comes. What is the reward? The reward is that there will be a revelation of the essence of Hashem. That is the reward. The reward that is coming for mitzvahs is that the essence of Hashem will be revealed. Kemvur B'Tanya is explained in Tanya. Meaning we think of the reward as being cakes growing on the trees. That we have already. And cakes growing on trees, that's not the reward of Mashiach. That's just so you don't have to worry about eating. The reward is that there'll be Gili Atzmos, there'll be a revelation of Hashem's essence, and there's no greater joy, no greater pleasure than a revelation of Hashem's essence. Every pleasure we chase after in this world is just a reflection of a diluted version of a corruption of godly light. I don't remember what I said. Every pleasure we have now, everything that's pleasure, like cake. Cake is pleasurable. But the pleasure in the cake, why is there pleasure in cake? Because there's divine light in the cake. Divine light, as it has been watered down, diluted, contracted, corrupted, and become physical. So as excited as we might be about a piece of cake, it's only because there's divine light in it. That's the pleasure that we get in it. If we would realize that that's not the real thing, that the real divine light is in much higher things, so then we'd be more excited about a Maamar than about cake. So in other words, if you'd be inviting friends over to have cake, in order to lure them to get there, you'd say, well, also learn a Maamar. So Lasi Lavai, in the future there'll be a Gilui Atzmus, there'll be a revelation of the essence of Hashem, which means that the very godliness, the very essence of Hashem will be revealed, and that ultimate pleasure will be the reward for all the mitzvahs. That's what it says in Tanya. So v'kiven shegilu zeh hu eli avoided her mitzvahs both in the Mesiras Nefesh canal. Now, since the way to bring that about, this revelation of the essence of Hashem, is through our hard work in Torah and mitzvahs, specifically in a way of Mesiras Nefesh, complete self-sacrifice, as we said earlier, that Eikev, the end of time, will do mitzvahs, and when we do them with Mesiras Nefesh, as it's done in the end of Golus, that brings about Mashiach. L'chein al yidei Eikev tishmun k'pirushat tzamach tzedek, havoda b'iksim l'shicha, she'az Mesiras Nefesh ul b'yoser, al yidei ze yegilid l'asadavi b'Eikev ani noisen lachem. So therefore, it's through Eikev tishmun, the way that Tzemach Tzedek explained it, which means the avoda in the end of Golus, the hardest time in history, which is the greatest Mesiras Nefesh, that avoda brings the revelation of the future, which is the way the Medrash explained Eikev, the rewards of the future. In brief, what is it saying? This is the point that the entire Maamar is going to build and explain. But the point is that the revelations of Moshiach will come as a result of avoda, of our work, of something that we do. Specifically, which avoda? The avoda of Mesiras Nefesh. Which is why the end of Golus, the time we're in now, is the time that requires the most Mesiras Nefesh, because it's the Mesiras Nefesh we do now that brings about the revelation of Mashiach that comes later. And the rest of the Maamar is going to explain why.
And
Yeah?
it's inevitable.
How do we serve Hashem when we serve Nefesh today, without killing ourselves?
That
What
we'll
do we
see.
do in our day-to-day lives?
Mesiras Nefesh doesn't just mean dying, it means giving yourself over to the Ratzon Hashem.
Like,
Giving up what you want to do and doing what Hashem wants to do.
is that as simple as not eating breakfast for half an hour and davening instead in the morning?
One example, yeah.
So anything like that, any time that we set by our own will to do what
Yeah.
Hashem wants, we
The Gemara says, "Malikata kulam malikata palga." What's the difference between killing the whole thing or half thing? Meaning, if you're killing a bit of yourself to serve Hashem, that's also Mesiras Nefesh. Even a partial giving of yourself is also Mesiras Nefesh. So every time you give up what you want to do what Hashem wants, that's Mesiras Nefesh. And now there's the most opportunities to do that than there was in all of history.
So what's the difference in Mesiras Nefesh and doing the mitzvah? If there's that struggle between what I want and what Hashem wants.
That's what the Maamar is going to explain.
Oh,
Let's go into Gimel, the bottom of the page. The Yuvin said, this will all be understood and become clear by first looking into something from Tanya. In Tanya, it says a very important statement. In Tanya it says that Tachlis Hashlemus Shel Yemos HaMashiach Utchias HaMeisim Tolui B'Maasenu V'Avedisenu Kol Zman Meshech HaGolus. It says Tanya that the completeness, the perfection that will be achieved in the days of Mashiach and in the time of Tchias HaMeisim, the revival of the dead, is dependent on our actions and our efforts throughout the entire duration of the Golus, of the exile. There is a principle, a concept that maybe sounds very obvious to us, but it's important to realize the chidush, the revolution that Tanya made by saying this. Again,
Does this refer to the
The-
two periods? Like the two...
it's talking about Mashiach and Tchias HaMeisim. The two things, the coming of Mashiach and the revival of the dead.
Has that anything to do with if we're Zeicher or not? That's what it's talking
No,
about?
what it's saying is that Mashiach comes and Tchias HaMeisim happens as a result of our actions and our avoda, our efforts during Golus. Meaning, Mashiach is not just an event on the calendar that happens one day, and until then, we're in Golus. No. Our Golus leads to Mashiach coming. The work that we do during Golus, the Avodah during Golus, is what creates the Mashiach reality. One is a consequence of the other.
What of the deadlines?
So, even the deadlines, it says, Kol Kitzim, we've passed all the deadlines. And
What's the point of deadlines if we're already passed?
good question. Good question. It means that there were opportune times when it could be now. Now makes sense. We passed them all. But either way, even they say 6,000 years, by the year 6,000, Mashiach must come. What that means is we must do the avodah by then. We have to, like we said at the beginning of the Maamar, that it's not an automatic thing. Mashiach doesn't pop into the world. It's something that comes as a result of our avodah. This will be explained. So on this statement of Tanya, the kos of Amur Bale Lulu be'arois of Al Gilyon Shel Sefer Tanya Shaloi. So the Rebbe says, my father, whose yard said it was on the day the Maamar was said, Chaf Menachem Av, which is tomorrow night, the 20th of Av, the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. Rebbe Levi Yitzchak wrote in his Ha'aras, in his notes on his Tanya specifically, meaning he wrote on the side of his Tanya, that Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, through the great poverty and persecutions that he was going through in Soviet Russia, didn't have paper to write on. So he had to write on the side of his books. So he has a Tanya, his copy of Tanya, and his comments on Tanya, he wrote on the Tanya, on the page of the Tanya. Which meant that the way he wrote was there'd be a lot of information on one section of Tanya, but there's not much space on the side of the page. So he wrote for a few pages, but then he could not comment on those pages that he just wrote through. His next commentary will be on a few pages later because there was no room anymore. Same on the Zohar. He had a Zohar, a copy of Zohar. He wrote comments on the Zohar. So you'd start at the beginning of a parasha and write comments for the first few pages, but then he wouldn't be able to write on those few pages because his comments on the first page took a few pages. You get it? Pasha didn't have pages. Ink also, it's well known that he didn't have ink to write. His wife would go out and gather grasses and things and make homemade ink for him, so he'd be able to write on his pages. So in the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak's Tanya, on the side in his notes, which the Rebbe adds in brackets, Shemeshech Kamashanim Hay B'Shivya, which by the way, the Sefer Tanya that belonged to my father was for many years in captivity. It was held by the Russians. His Sfarim were held and not released. Ubezman Achron Niftu, and very recently they became redeemed. Sefer Tanya Shaloi, Im Oid Sfarim Shaloi, his Tanya, as long as other books of his, Mashivya V'Gila Khan, they were redeemed from captivity and arrived here in America. So this the Rebbe was saying in 1967, not long before that. The Sfarim were released, that he received his father's Sfarim with all his handwritten notes. It was quite miraculous how it was released from Soviet hands. So the Rebbe here on his father's yard side wants to mention that his father wrote on the side of his Tanya, on this section of Tanya, that talks about the fact that Moshiach and Tchias HaMesim come as a result of our actions and our efforts of Golus. The Inyan Beis Elishonos, b'Maasenu v'Avodasenu, the fact that Tanya uses two phrases, our actions and our efforts, Maasenu v'Avodasenu, Yuvan Mimashakosov l'Kaman b'Geras HaKodesh Simen Yud Beis, Dibur Maskil v'Hoya Ma'aseh Tzedakah v'Gomer Ayin Sham. This will be understood, writes the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, by what's written later in Tanya, in the section of Geras HaKodesh, Simen Yud Beis, in section 12, in the letter that starts with the words V'Haya Ma'aseh Tzedakah and the action of Tzedakah, Ayin Sham, look there, writes Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. Again, these are just the words, we'll understand them in a minute, but the words Rebbe Levi Yitzchak writes on the side of his Tanya is, you'll understand why it says Ma'asenu v'Avodasenu, our actions and our efforts bring about Mashiach and Tchias HaMesim. You'll understand that by looking in another section in Tanya, Igeras HaKodesh, where it says Ma'aseh Tzedakah, it talks about the word Ma'aseh. Have a look there. Ulachar ze mamshich, and then he writes, the Yeshloimer shemasenu koyal yimes Mashiach, v'avodasenu koyal Tchias HaMesim, that our actions lead to Mashiach, our efforts lead to Tchias HaMesim. So again, writes Rebbe Yitzchak, in Tanya it says that Mashiach coming and the revival of the dead are dependent on our actions and our efforts during Golus. That's the quote from Tanya. On that, Rebbe Yitzchak says, this will be understood why it says, Ma'aseinu v'avodeseinu, our actions and our efforts, these two phrases. What's the difference between actions and efforts? Our actions and our efforts.
Which one comes first?
And which comes first? Yeah, don't you need to put effort to do something? What does it mean, our actions and our efforts? What is the meaning of these phrases, these two words? That will be understood by looking in another section of Tanya, Yud Beis, in Egeres HaKodesh. And says Rebbe Leivik, and when we understand what those two things mean, our actions lead to Mashiach, our efforts lead to Tchis HaMeisim.
Is that what it says in Egeres HaKodesh?
No, that's what he adds. That the reason why there's two phrases is because there actually is a big difference between our actions and our efforts. They're totally different things. And our actions lead to Mashiach coming. Our efforts lead to Tchis HaMeisim, which are also two different things. Mashiach and Tchis HaMeisim.
You have one without the other.
Well, we'll see when we see what they mean. We'll see if you can. This the Rebbe explains on the next page at the top. What does he mean here? That our actions and our efforts are two different things, as is explained in Egeres HaKodesh. So, top of the page. V'ina kavanos shabal lulu b'meshem etzayin l'Egeres HaKodesh t'minyan beis d'ivin maskil v'aya ma'aseh tzedakah gomer. The meaning of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, what he meant when he said, look at Egeres HaKodesh to understand what these two phrases, our actions and our efforts, mean, it seems quite simple, on a simple level. If you look at Egeres HaKodesh, that section of Tanya, in section 12, Hafresh ben Maisa lavoda, it explains there the difference between action and effort. Maisa and avoda. What does it say there? In Tanya it says, Shem Maisa noifel al davar shekvar nasa, oisha nasa tamid memela. The word Maisa in Hebrew, which we translate as an action, there it refers to something that has already been done or is done constantly and regularly. V'davar ahoy v'ragul tamid. It's an automatic, regular thing that has happened before. That's what the word Maisa means. Masha enken lashon avoda, but the word avoda, effort, eina noifel el al davar sha'adam oisa b'giat tzuma, neget heva nafshay. That refers to something that a person has done with great work, toil, against the nature of their soul. It means that the person has nullified their own will in front of the will of Hashem.
That's Mr. Nefesh?
Yeah, that's one example of it. What does he say? That in Tanya it says the words are exact in Hebrew. Maisa and avoda. Maisa means an action. Avoda means an effort, a work, a spiritual toil. What it refers to is Maisa means an action that is done all the time. Regular, usual, natural, and predictable. Avoda means something that you break yourself to do. You work hard to do. It's against your nature, you do it anyway. You do it for Hashem. And there he talks about tzedakah. In that particular section of Tanya, Egeres HaKodesh, Siman Yud Beis, it talks about tzedakah. There's Maisa tzedakah and Avodah tzedakah. Maisa tzedakah means giving tzedakah in a way that is your nature. This is what you're used to. Whereas Avodah tzedakah is giving more than you're used to in a way that you wouldn't normally do, that has to break your nature to do it. So that's the Tanya that the Levi Yitzchak was quoting. So how does that apply to what he was discussing, the Tanya that he was explaining? So in Perek Lamed Zayin, in chapter 37 of Tanya, where it says that Mashiach and Tchis HaMeisim come as a result of action and effort in Golus. So what does it mean? Maasenu, our actions, is referring to the mitzvahs that we do according to our nature and our habits. The mitzvahs that come natural to us. But our efforts refers to the mitzvahs that we do that are greater, more beyond our nature, beyond what we're used to. we do with great strain. Yeah? So, to bring Mashiach, you need to do mitzvahs. But for Tchis HaMeisim, you need to make effort in mitzvahs. So it's enough that you do the mitzvahs that you regularly do to bring Mashiach. But to achieve Tchis HaMeisim, to bring about Tchis HaMeisim, we need to do mitzvahs that are beyond our nature. We have to stretch ourselves. And that's why in Tanya it says that Mashiach and Tchis HaMeisim come as a result of Maisa and Avodah. Our actions, the mitzvahs that we do, but that are expected. And then our Avodah, the mitzvahs we do that are beyond what's expected. We go against our nature. We break ourselves to do them.
Is there any specific reason that one is corresponding to
Yeah, which we'll see. That will be explained.
What I don't understand is that Jews have been doing this for thousands of years, doing mitzvahs and Mesiras Nefesh. Like, you hear of, like, I don't know, great tzaddikim in Russia and the Mesiras Nefesh they have, and like even very simple Jews, like giving up their lives, you know, for Hashem. Like, why is this new to now? To like,
That we'll see. We'll see why at the end of Golus there's a new level of Mesiras Nefesh that hasn't been before. We'll see that later. Yeah. So it seems that we've explained Rabbi Levi Yitzchak his little note on the side of his Tanya, what he meant when he said that to understand why it says our actions and our efforts will lead to Tchis HaMeisim, to Mashiach and Tchis HaMeisim. What he means was that our actions, like it says in later in Tanya, normal mitzvahs, and our efforts, mitzvahs that are beyond, that we make an extra effort to. But the Rebbe says no, that can't be it. But the fact that my father writes, says the Rebbe, on his Tanya he wrote, that the two expressions in Tanya earlier, our actions and our efforts, will be understood by looking into Tanya in Igeres HaKodesh in chapter 12. And after he quotes where it is, he says, Ayin Sham, look there. He writes this. Mashma de kavanasa b'meshim etzayin l'geres hakodesh anal he nosef ala hefresh ben ma'aseh la'avodas stam gam lamavur sham b'inyan ha'ma'aseh tzedakah. It implies that he's not just telling us where to look. If his wife had to gather grass to make ink, and if he had to write on the margin of his Tanya, and he had so little paper, so then he's not going to waste any words or letters. Everything he writes there must be exact. So if he just wants us to know that, in Tanya, later it explains the difference between Maisa and Avodah. And he just wants to tell us where. All he would need to write is, look at Igeres HaKodesh Siman Yud. The fact that he writes that this double expression will be understood, as if there's something that needs to be understood here. It will be understood if you look at Igeres HaKodesh Siman Yud Beis. And he says, Ayin Sham, look into it there, go and investigate there. It must mean there's much more that he wants us to get out of this reference. There must be a deeper understanding of why Maisa brings to Mashiach and Avodah brings to Tchis HaMeisim.
How do we infer that from what he says? Like, we would need the Rebbe to explain that.
That's why we have it.
But like, who are those notes for?
For the Rebbe.
Right, so okay.
So it must be that we have to look further into what it says in the Igeres HaKodesh to understand this deeper. That by investigating and looking into it, through looking at it deeply, we'll have a better understanding of the difference between what it means, our actions that bring Mashiach, and our efforts which bring Tchis HaMeisim. There must be more to it there. Yeah, you with me? So let's keep going. The next paragraph. If you look into that Igeres HaKodesh that Rabbi Levi quoted, it explains what does Ma'aseh Tzedakah mean. Meaning, Ma'aseh Tzedakah, remember, means
regular, something regular.
right. The regular tzedakah, the mitzvah that you do, the mitzvah tzedakah particularly it's talking about there, tzedakah that you do by nature. So what does it mean? Is it enough to do natural mitzvahs to bring Mashiach? That's enough? Doing mitzvahs by nature is enough to bring Mashiach?
do have to have the kavanah in order to achieve the Tchilas Mesim. Those who didn't have the kavanah and doing the mitzvahs don't achieve Tchilas Mesim.
Not kavanah, avoida, effort, extra effort. So yeah, what does that actually mean? So if you look in the Geras HaKodesh there, it explains. Dezeh sheYisrael b'tivam hem rachmanim v'goyim lechasadim hu m'nei hayos nafsheiseim nimshachas mibidoisav yisbarach asher chesed gover ben al midas hadin. The fact that it says in the Gemara about the Jewish people that the Jewish people have a nature of being merciful and kind. Rachmanim and goyim lechasadim. That is because the Jewish soul is an expression of Hashem's emotive faculties. And in Hashem's emotions, chesed, kindness, overrides strictness. And that's why the neshama is called the daughter of the kohen, bas kohen. Every neshama is called a bas kohen, because kohen is a chesed. Kohen is a person of kindness, the people who bless the Jewish people with love. And so that really here represents Hashem and His kindness. Every neshama is a daughter of a kohen, meaning it's an expression of Hashem's kindness. Just like Hashem's kindness overrides His strictness, so to the Jewish soul, the nefesh halakis, by its very nature, is kind and generous.
Sorry, where is this called Bas-Kohen?
Where is it? In the Torah, when it talks about a bas kohen, so the Zohar explains that it's referring to the neshama. And all the halachas of a bas kohen, of daughter of a kohen, is referring to the neshama. So what it's saying here is that there's a natural kindness that is a part of the Jewish soul, and that is because the soul is an expression of the divine emotions, which kindness is stronger than justice, strictness. So therefore the Jewish people are a generous, giving people. Now in Tanya there it explains, in the Geras HaKodesh, that tzedakah hanimshachas mibchila zu nikra b'shem ma'aseh tzedakah. If you're kind and generous, if you give tzedakah because you have a Jewish soul, and the Jewish soul is a giving soul, that's called ma'aseh tzedakah. Ki shem ma'aseh noifel al davar ha'hov v'ragul tamid. Because ma'aseh refers to something that's normal, that's regular, that is done naturally.
Could you say easy?
Maybe not. We'll see in a minute. But the goodness of your soul, that came already. That was there from the start. That was there from when your soul came down from its source. There was already goodness and kindness and generosity in your soul. So when you do a mitzvah of kindness, of tzedakah, because your soul has that nature of kindness, that's not a new thing. That's something that was there already. That was something that's a part of your nature. It's ingrained. It's a part of you. It's not something that you created. So it's very nice. It's not a bad thing. You did a mitzvah, but you did a mitzvah. Why? Because that's your nature. Your divine soul is like that already. Now the reason why I don't want to say it's easy is because we're talking here about the nature of your divine soul. Happens to be you also have an animal soul. And your animal soul does not always agree to your divine soul being expressed. So you may have a great struggle to be generous. As we know, there are Jews who are not generous. And we all sometimes struggle to give something and to be generous. Why is that? Because we have an animal soul, and the animal soul gets in the way of our generosity and stops it. Like they say about there's a difference between tzedakah amongst Jewish people and in the general world. There are generous people of all nations. But a generous person in the general world gives charity. They are generous. A Jew gives, but how does a Jew give? When you go to a Jew to ask a Jew for a donation, they say, you ask me again? Do you know how many people have asked me? Do you know how many people need help? You're the 10th person that's asked me today. Haven't I given you already? And there's all these reasons why. In the end, okay, fine, and they give. They give. They still give. That's what's the Jewish way. to give, even reluctantly, even annoyed by it. Yeah, but you give. But why? Because that's something that's ingrained in your soul to give. That's called Ma'aseh Tzedakah. That's not yet avodah. Even though you've conquered your nefesh bahamis to give, but you've conquered your nefesh bahamis in order that the nature of your nefesh lekis can be expressed. So what are you doing? You're doing what you were born to do. It's not yet called avodah. That's still called ma'aseh.
But what does that mean by going against your nature? Is there anything bad about your nature? Because everyone's halakha, so there's nothing really.
Right. Here we're talking about the nature of your nefesh lekis to give tzedakah. So what is there anything wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not complete. It's not complete yet. We'll see. It's not called avodah. Why? Because what's avodah? V'avodah, on the fifth last line at the end. V'avodas hatzedakah hi shenesinas hatzedakah shloi hi yoser gam mateved nefesh lekis. Avodas hatzedakah. The effort of giving tzedakah means that you're giving tzedakah more than your divine nature dictates. Meaning that you're not just giving based on your generous nature, you're giving more than that. You're giving because that's what Hashem wants. Not because it's your nature to do it, because this is what Hashem wants you to do. So you're going beyond yourself, even your good self, to give.
So our nature is according to the letter of the law, and we're saying beyond that is beyond the nefesh lekis.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And here it's not even necessarily talking about the amount, it's also talking about where's it coming from. Is it coming from your generosity? Or is it coming from the need of the other person? The mitzvah that Hashem wants to help somebody else. It's not coming from you in the first place. In Ma'aseh Tzedakah means you're giving because that's the generosity of your soul. Avodas Tzedakah is you're giving because that's what Hashem says.
How do you get there? How do you even know?
But yeah.
But when it takes over your whole life and you've got no room for anything else, is that when it's enough?
What do we know room for everything else? That's
yeah,
not.
do we have to be miserable?
Like you don't sleep and you don't do things that you need to do because there's so much work to be
No,
done.
that's selfish. That's being selfish.
But there's so many people that need help.
Right, but so how are you going to help so many people? By being exhausted? By not looking after yourself? That's being a martyr. That's not being good. Going beyond nefesh lekis means that you'll look after yourself to be able to give, because that's what you're here to do.
How do you know, just like when you're doing mitzvah, whatever mitzvah it is, that it's not, if it's you're doing it because it's part of your nature, or you're doing it because you're going against, like you're doing more than your nature. How do you know?
So there's stages in avodah. There's different stages in avodah. The first stage in avodah is ma'aseh, doing the right thing in spite of your nefesh bahamis. That's the first stage.
Yeah.
To battle, meaning your nefesh bahamis does not want you to do the mitzvah. Your nefesh lekis does want you to do the mitzvah. So you have to overcome your nefesh bahamis and let your nefesh lekis win. That's the first stage. We may have thought that was it. That's where it ends. That avodah is about your nefesh lekis winning over your nefesh bahamis.
That's so hard. Like, how do we go beyond that? Like,
Pushing yourself.
yeah, but pushing
I don't know.
yourself
Ah.
is trying to overcome your
So yeah, till now you thought, this is what this Maamar is teaching. Till now you thought that pushing yourself, conquering yourself means beating the nefesh bahamis. And if you beat your nefesh bahamis and let your nefesh lekis come out, so then you've got there. That's amazing. And if you're doing that, wonderful. You're not doing anything wrong. That's necessary. That's ma'aseinu. That will bring Moshiach.
But you're still only winning silver.
Moshiach is not bad. But it's not everything. There's also tchis amesim. There's also avodah. And avodah means again, there is an interpretation of avoda. Avoda means breaking your nefesh bahamis. That is an avoda, but real avoda means where you're stretching yourself, that your goodness is coming from a place beyond you as well, beyond your good nature.
Does it ever happen?
Yeah,
When?
sure.
I think the nature of the nation is to do something only the right time.
Yeah, and that's the problem. The problem is that that's its nature. So that's what it wants.
Right. So how do you
How do you go higher than that?
get higher on that? If we just wait, if what it wants is to do something not for itself, then it's like
Isn't this the whole...
So the Maamar is going to show how there's a way to go even beyond the nefesh elokis, and that is where the impetus for the mitzvah is not even your divine soul's desire to do it; it's Hashem's desire. It's coming from Him, not from you.
But isn't that
The
the
Maamar will show how.
Isn't
It's not the same thing,
is that only tzaddikim accomplish that?
huh?
Do only tzaddikim accomplish that?
No. We'll see. It is possible. It's an avodah that is actually possible. It will be explained.
Mocha says I learned more intangible than all this.
Let's look. Umezeh moving. Fourth last line there. Umezeh moving. Okay, so what this means is the chiluk sheben ma'asenu lavodisenu b'cholus Torah mitzvasu. What's the difference between ma'aseh and avodah, ma'asenu and avodisenu? If you're doing the mitzvah already, so what's the difference if it's a ma'aseh mitzvah or a avodah mitzvah? The gam kishen nefesh bahamesh shalei masteres ala teved nefesh lekis. Even if you are struggling with your nefesh bahamis, your animal soul is blocking the nature of your divine soul to do good. And you have to work really hard to extract your nefesh bahamis, its clutches over your nefesh elokis, or legalas hateved nefesh elokis, and to reveal your divine nature. So if what you're doing is you're struggling that your nefesh bahamis, which is trying to distract you, trying to make you into gashmias and into material things and into selfish things, and you're struggling to overcome that, get rid of it, and allow the divine nature within you to come out and to serve Hashem. If that's what you're doing, but that's good. But you've got to realize that's still step one. That's masenu. That's the action of mitzvahs. Why? What's lacking there? Over the page. Mikivin. The next page. Mikivin. Page Ayin. Mikivin shahayagia shaloi. Hirak legalis ateved nafsha elokis. Because now the work you're doing, your hard work is only going to reveal the nature of your nefesh elokis. So it's not yet called avodah. Because what are you trying to do? You're trying to reveal your nature. That's still you. Avodah means that you're working hard to reveal a level that's even higher than your nature, even your divine nature. Which will need to be explained in the next section. But again, here the Rebbe is stretching our parameters now, our spiritual definitions. That we thought it was enough. if you're conquering your nefesh bahamis, that's avodah, no? That's hard work. No. That's being true to your nature. You've got a divine nature. Your animal soul is getting in the way. So pushing that aside to let your divine nature come out, that is being true to who you are, who you really are. That's you. That's your nature. That's letting your nature come through. Your natural goodness come through. Which is good. But it's not avodah yet.
What about, like, everyone has a different nefesh bahamis. Some people's nefesh bahamis is really strong and really hard to overcome. Some people are, like, by nature good, you know, and they're much more in touch with the nefesh elokis by nature. They're just, like, want to do what Hashem wants.
Right.
Like, it's so much more of an avodah for people to get over the nefesh bahamis when it's so strong and so powerful.
What do you think is harder, to get over the nefesh bahamis or to get over the nefesh elokis? What's actually harder?
What do you mean?
Well, what the Rebbe is saying is that there's two types of serving Hashem. There's two things you need to overcome. You need to overcome your nefesh bahamis in order that your divine nature should come out. Step one. Then there's another thing you need to do, and that is to overcome your nefesh lakis, meaning to not serve Hashem through your nature, but to go beyond even that. So, the truth is, you're talking about two different people. There's some people who struggle with the very strong nefesh bahamis. There's some people who the nefesh bahamis is not so strong. The nefesh lakis is very strong. But let's talk about the same person. In each one of us, there are certain areas of Yiddishkeit where our nefesh bahamis challenges us every time, and every time we try to do it, our nefesh bahamis comes and attacks us, and it's very hard for us. Our nefesh lakis wants to do the right thing, and we know what the right thing is, but our nefesh bahamis picks on us in this particular area. It's very strong. But then there are other areas where our nefesh bahamis is not so strong. There are other mitzvahs that we do quite easily and naturally. We don't have any resistance, hardly any resistance to it. It comes naturally to us. So, before we've learned this, we would think that where is our work? Where's the work we need to do? In the areas where the nefesh bahamis attacks us. That's where we need to work hard, because we've got certain mitzvahs that we've got in the bag. They're fine. There are other mitzvahs that we're struggling with, and that's our struggle. True, but it's not the whole picture. You also have to struggle. The things that come naturally to you, it's not enough, because that's not avodah. You have to be doing them on a deeper level as well, which we'll understand what that means soon.
So we have to struggle with everything. Is basically what you're saying.
Correct. Correct. And if you don't struggle with this, then you'll struggle with other things, because everyone's struggling. So you can either be struggling with your own nefesh bahamis and nefesh lakis issues, or you can be struggling with different things, more petty and meaningless, empty, external, superficial things. Everyone's got to struggle.
What if you do a mitzvah with like a cold heart, so you haven't actually overcome your nefesh bahamis?
Well, you have as far as doing. The nefesh bahamis had to agree to you doing the mitzvah. So if you've done it already, the nefesh bahamis has been conquered on the level of ma'aseh, at least of action. It's letting you do it. On the level of emotion, of feeling, your nefesh bahamis is still there. But you've weakened your nefesh bahamis now because you've let the nefesh lakis dominate action. So you've surrounded the nefesh bahamis, because at your depth you've got a nefesh lakis that wants to do mitzvahs. Externally you've done the mitzvah. In between is the nefesh bahamis that is holding your heart and saying, I don't want to do this. But now he's surrounded, so you're weakening him every time. So it's still a victory over the nefesh bahamis.
But really, to like get to that level, isn't that like the level of tzaddik? Like not only to reveal your goodness, but to further extend
Let's
it?
see. Look at the next section, Dalit.
Just quickly, I know
Yeah.
I'm talking a lot. We always taught we're just it's ingrained in us. Like the mitzvahs you do by nature are like they're important, but when you really break yourself, that's really when you really struggle with something and you do that. So that is the ultimate. But like here, it's like just flipping it over. Like
Well, no, it's extending that idea, and it's saying struggle that doesn't just mean struggling with your nefesh bahamis.
yeah, but it's like push. You have to.
It means
just because you're doing something by nature doesn't mean you're doing it right. Like it doesn't mean.
There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. It's just there's a deeper level of avodah. This is one of the main themes of Chassidus is this idea of avodah, which means that we're here to extend, to expand, to go further. And so it's not enough to just say, we're doing mitzvahs comfortably. We have to grow in that. And growing doesn't just mean in the negative, battling our negative side. It also means within the positive, making it better and holier, doing the mitzvahs in a higher way. So it's the same idea that the best thing is when you break yourself, either your nefesh bahamis or there's even breaking your nefesh lakis. It'll become clearer if we go into the next section. This will be understood, this idea of breaking your nefesh lakis, this will be understood by something that's explained elsewhere in Chassidus. That there's an advantage of Bali Tshuva over tzaddikim gemurim. That a Bal Tshuva, meaning Somebody who has sinned and has done tshuva, has done the wrong thing but has come back. That person has an advantage over a tzaddik gomer, somebody who never sinned. And that advantage is twofold. Aleph, the first is, Shalidei tshuva miskalat tokef eskashus shal nishmasei makadosh baruch hu. Through tshuva, through returning after you've fallen, you've done the wrong thing, but then you came back. What you've revealed is just how deep your soul's connection is with Hashem. That even the separation that was caused through sin, as the Torah says, every sin is a separation from Hashem, a disconnect. But even that separation, that separation is only external. It's not in the essence of your soul. And what's the proof? You disconnected from Hashem and you reconnected to Hashem. How did that happen? Because the disconnection must not have been complete. Because if it would be, then you couldn't reconnect. The fact that you did tshuva, you came back, shows that your connection with Hashem is much deeper than the superficial rift that was caused through the sin. Because the proof is that even after you've sinned, you've disconnected from Hashem, in one moment, one sincere feeling of tshuva makes you into a complete tzaddik relative to how you were before. So what does that show? That you never were really disconnected from Hashem. Because if you were, then how could you reconnect? Disconnected means there's no means of connection. So where did tshuva come from? It came from a level within your soul that shows that your connection with Hashem is deeper than the rift that was caused. Just like it happens in making up in any relationship. What does it mean to make up with somebody? It means that we were friends, and then you wronged me, or I wronged you, or something happened, a misunderstanding, and we became not friends. So if it ends there, it ends there. What does that mean? It means that our friendship does not run any deeper than the issue that came between us. We had a friendship, but that friendship cannot last a harsh word, or you forgot my birthday, or whatever it was, that now we're not friends anymore. But if you make up, if you feel bad about what you did, your friend apologizes to you, and you reconnect with each other, what does that show? It shows that we have a friendship that runs deeper than that particular thing we went through. And the proof is that we went through it, we were not friends for a while, but then we realized that there's a bond that supersedes this rift that we have now. And so we become friends, and we become better friends now. Our friendship is much better understood now, because we didn't know that it could last through such a thing until it happened. Now we know that our friendship can even last such an interruption. So the depth of the friendship is now revealed. And it wouldn't be otherwise. The Baal Tshuva has this and the Tzaddik doesn't. The Baal Tshuva has experienced palpably the level of connection he has with Hashem. Why? Because the Baal Tshuva sinned, did the wrong thing, and then came back and reconnected, showing that the Baal Tshuva's connection with Hashem is far deeper than just the external sin that happened. A tzaddik has that connection, but doesn't know it, doesn't experience it, because it was never tested. It was never brought to that challenge.
What does it need that challenge for?
Doesn't need it, but it can only be revealed through it. That level of connection is only revealed through that challenge. Again, in a human friendship, as long as you're just friends and you never hurt each other's feelings, so you don't know, it's not revealed, you don't experience the depth of that friendship. It needs a rift, it needs an issue to actually bring to the fore how deep that friendship is. And if you have a deep friendship, a deep relationship, and you never argue or fight or misunderstand each other, then that relationship remains on a certain level of superficiality. I once said this at a wedding class, couples getting married, that if you haven't had a fight, then you're not really close. If you haven't had an argument, then you're not really connected. So a few months later, I was at the wedding of one of the couples, and the groom gets up in his speech. He quotes me and he says, in this class we learned that if you haven't had an argument, then you're not really close. So he said, we left that class very nervous because we never had fought before. We'd never had a fight. And we looked at each other and said, maybe our relationship is not real. Like, we haven't ever tested it. How do we know it will last? And he said, thank God. Soon after that, we had a massive fight. And we're here today at our wedding. So he said it's true.
So that making up, is that going beyond the self? Or beyond the nature? Is that where that ties in?
No, not yet. What this is saying is that what you reveal is a relationship that was there before. The tzaddik has this connection with Hashem too. We're not saying that the Baal Tshuva has a connection with Hashem and the tzaddik doesn't. Of course, the tzaddik has this inner bond. His soul is completely bound up with Hashem as well. But that's not revealed. It's not out in the open because it's never been tested. You never had to. He never had to draw out the depth of his soul to show that we're really connected because he's connected on the externalities of his soul. On every level of his soul, the tzaddik is connected to Hashem. So he doesn't have to reveal the inner level. Whereas a Baal Tshuva is somebody who on the surface disconnected from Hashem. Those levels of the soul are not connected. So how does he reconnect? By showing that on a deeper level we never parted. We were always connected. So the Baal Tshuva's advantage over the tzaddik is just in what's revealed. And there's nothing new there, there's nothing different there, it's just one is out in the open, whereas the other one is buried underneath. The Baal Tshuva's connection, deep connection, is open, whereas the tzaddik's connection to Hashem is on the superficial level obvious, so therefore the deeper level is not obvious. Like this couple who I just said, it wasn't that their relationship only became close after they had a fight. They had it before, just it wasn't tested yet, so they didn't know. Until they had this argument, it revealed that, our connection really is this deep. Until now, the superficial connection was all good, so therefore we don't know what the deeper connection is. When the superficial connection is lost, and we have an argument, is there anything left? If not, so then it was never there. If it is, then it was always there.
So how can we call a tzaddik tzaddik? Because since he's never being tested, then how do we know that he's a tzaddik?
We don't call him a tzaddik. Hashem calls him a tzaddik. He is a tzaddik. That's the level he's on.
Will that level of his status ever be revealed for them?
We'll see. We'll see that too. Base. There's a second advantage that the Baal Tshuva has over a tzaddik. Third last line in the paragraph. Did we read it all? I don't know if we read all the words. So the fifth last line. So the first advantage of the Baal Tshuva of the tzaddik is that in the Baal Tshuva, it's revealed the inner connection that his neshama has with Hashem, which is hidden in a tzaddik but not revealed. Base, but what's the second advantage? Through tshuva in such a way that transforms the sins into merits. It's like his averos become mitzvahs. As it says in the Gemara, when you do tshuva ma'avo, out of love, when you really return to Hashem out of love, the sins that you did become like mitzvahs. They become your merits, not negative points, but positive points. When you do tshuva in such a way, then the Baal Tshuva has an advantage that the tzaddik doesn't have even potentially, even in a hidden level. There's something totally new there that the tzaddik cannot and does not have. As it is explained, that the merits, the mitzvahs that were created out of averos through tshuva are greater than the mitzvahs that a tzaddik has done. What do we just say?
So
This is an amazing thing.
The two levels.
That when you do an Aveira, what is the definition of an Aveira? Something that disconnects you from Hashem, distances you from Hashem, creates a barrier between you and Hashem. That's what an Aveira is. What is a mitzvah? Something that connects you with Hashem, that reveals your closeness, that brings you closer to Hashem. So, what does a tzaddik do? Mitzvahs. Increases his closeness to Hashem through mitzvahs. What does a Baal Tshuva? Baal Tshuva is somebody who did an Avera, disconnected from Hashem, then realized the distance and reconnected with Hashem. When you do that, so what brought the Baal Tshuva close to Hashem? The Avera. Of course, the tshuva that he did on the Avera, but how did he get to tshuva? Through the Avera. And so, what made the Baal Tshuva reveal a deeper connection with Hashem that could not have come otherwise? The Avera did it. So, when you do an Avera, it's a disconnect from Hashem. After you do an Avera and you do tshuva, after the fact, not before, but afterwards, the Avera becomes a means to get closer to Hashem. That the Avera you did brought you closer to Hashem. So therefore, if we're going to list all the mitzvahs that you've done, again, what's the definition of a mitzvah? Something that brings you closer to Hashem. So the mitzvahs of a Baal Tshuva include his Averas, because they also brought him closer to Hashem, because through the Avera he did tshuva. If he didn't do tshuva, the Avera remains an Avera. And you can't do an Avera to do tshuva, because then the Avera is a part of the tshuva. It doesn't work. But after you've done tshuva sincerely, so then the Avera that was taking you away from Hashem has brought you closer to Hashem, so that's included in your mitzvahs. Not only is it a mitzvah, but it's a mitzvah that a tzaddik could never do. It's got more energy, more power than the mitzvahs of a tzaddik. It's something he can't do, and it's something that is beyond what he does. And not only the tzaddik can't do it, not even in potential does the tzaddik have the possibility to do it. Because a tzaddik, by definition, does mitzvahs, not averas. So the tzaddik does not have the opportunity to do the avera. And therefore, to do tshuva that comes from the avera. So the holiness that is generated through an avera that's followed by tshuva is a level of holiness that the tzaddik doesn't have, cannot have, and it is greater than anything that the tzaddik can do.
But he can get others to do it.
Correct. Yes.
And then he's included in it, no?
Correct. Yeah. Which is, I believe, why it says that on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Matzeva, on his gravestone, the wording, which assumedly the Frierdiker Rebbe was involved with, or the Rebbe definitely was, and on the Rebbe's Matzeva as well, it says, of all the things, it doesn't say much, but it says, Rabbi Heshim Avan, that he brought many people back from sin. So I remember when I first read it, thinking like, how could you have the word sin on the Matzeva of a Rebbe? Like, even though it says he brought many people back from sin, how could you write that on the, like, of all things you could write about a Rebbe, that he brought many people from sin? Why is that? Why mention even the word sin? But this makes sense, because a tzaddik can't do tshuva like a Baal Tshuva can. But if a tzaddik inspires somebody to do tshuva, so then they have a part in that tshuva as well. So they have the maila, they have the advantage of being a tzaddik, and also the Baal Tshuva, by proxy, they have the Baal Tshuva advantage as well. So the greatest thing you can say about a tzaddik is that he makes Baal Tshuva. So, what have we said here? There's two things that come out of it, the advantages that a Baal Tshuva has over a tzaddik. One is that he reveals something that the tzaddik has hidden. He reveals the inner connection that he has with Hashem, that the tzaddik doesn't live on that plane because he doesn't need to. So he reveals the inner connection that the tzaddik also has, but it's not revealed by the tzaddik, it's revealed by the Baal Tshuva. That's one advantage. But a second advantage is that the Baal Tshuva achieves something that tzaddik cannot do. He does something beyond where a tzaddik can go, because he goes off the path and comes back on. And when he comes back on, it's with a great inspiration and energy. He flings back into the path. So the Avera brought him closer to Hashem. So he has now got a mitzvah, a Avera converted to a mitzvah, which is a level of mitzvah that a tzaddik cannot achieve. So what we'll see is how the same applies to the neshama coming down into this world, as opposed to the neshama as it is up in the heavens. And the advantage that can be achieved is the lower the neshama goes, the higher it can return. And only through the neshama coming down can that be achieved. And that is, we'll see, is the difference between Maisa and Avodah. But that, God willing, we'll have to wait till next week.
Finished.